Hi guys, today we're going to be taking a look at a vintage Longines automatic, and I would say from the general overall look of it, it's probably 50s, possibly 60s, most likely 50s design I suspect. So just need to pop open the case. Interesting, the balance is swinging. Very interestingly, because it wasn't doing that a short while ago when I had a look. Very, very lackluster, but swinging nonetheless. Now, I can see straight away we're missing a couple of screws. There was a screw loose inside of here when I had a brief look, and you would think logically that that's the one that belongs here. However, it doesn't fit. There's also a screw missing here, so you'd think perhaps it's that one. It doesn't fit there either. I'm not entirely sure where that little screw comes from. So, well, it's not such an enormous problem. It's just a case of there's a couple of missing screws, which is certainly not unheard of. The fact that the balance swings is a great start, always a good start when you're looking at a movement. So I'll just slide that off its post. Oh, let's try and get this focused. Apologies, I thought that was in focus, clearly wasn't. And we've got a very interesting automatic winding system here, which is operated by a heart, like you would find on a chronograph on the back of the oscillating weight, and moves up and down, a little stiff. So that's the automatic winding portion. We'll have a look at that in a bit more detail shortly. I'm actually quite intrigued at the fact that the balance is spinning, because I did have a brief look before and it wasn't, and I'm wondering if one of those missing screws is somewhere inside of the movement. There's also some other little bits of detritus that you can see just down here. Not sure what they are, but they look like bits of dirt of some description. Interesting, very interesting. It's got a little bit more gusto with the spring wound. Just have a quick look at the case back. There's a couple of service marks, but you can see really, really nicely finished case back, and the stamp in the middle, the Longines stamp, and I don't know if the service marks are visible, but there's a couple of scratched service marks up at the top here. Thankfully not really large and obvious. And looking at the balance, there is a kind of shock system there, and it does have a weighted balance with a fixed stud, so I would say definitely 50s. Looking at the design of it, this is quite clearly a front loader. The bezel pops off the front, and then the movement will be removed from the front, I suspect, after removing these interesting looking screws here. You can see the bezel is shaped. You've got this cut out here for the crown, for the stem hump, and then you've got a little cutaway there on the opposite side where you lever it open. Yeah, these are definitely holding rings, casing rings to hold the movement in place. So I'm going to go ahead and first of all, what we're going to do is pop the crown back in, and I'm going to take the hands off. And interestingly, the balance has just stopped again. So I think there's definitely something adrift inside there. And as you can see, the balance is swinging freely. It's just suddenly stopped running. And ordinarily, that means that there's something loose inside there. That's strange, those. They look almost like little bits of resin or something. Wonder if the last person in here was just perhaps having a light snack while they reassembled it before they put the case back on. Who knows? It'd be an old bit of McVitie's digestive or something. Or perhaps it was, you know, assuming it was actually worked on in Switzerland or similar last, being a Longines, it could be some kind of Swiss biscuit. Oh, that one's awkward. Very, very close to the dial. Very close. And still attached to the hour wheel. That really doesn't want to let go, that one. Okay, let's go again. I'm actually going to try the Presto tool, which I'm usually not a fan of. I find it tends to have certain uses, but in this case it's proved quite useful. There we go. Let's take a look here. Okay. And there's another little bit inside the case which you can probably just see down there. There's definitely something, some bits of something in there that shouldn't be there. I was actually expecting to see a couple of cutaways inside the front of the case, which these simply fell out of. But they're obviously, as you can see, that's not the case. These are indeed securing screws. I'm just going to pop that back in there for the moment. After a bit of closer investigation, the dial screws are in fact hiding in these tiny little slots. So we have one here. It's interesting, you kind of have to go by feel a little because you can't really see, once the screwdriver is in there, where that's going. Come on now. There we go. And oh, we come. Smashing. Oops. Come on now. There we go. Okay. Very nice. Nicely finished front plates with some Côte de Genève and a very interesting dial back. I don't know how visible that is on the camera, but it has little sort of etchings with the letters AL. The balance cock is held in by the most ridiculously long screw I've ever seen in my life. Look at that. That's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a balance cock screw as long as that. That's strange, but now I'm going to get my brass tweezers and an oiler to help encourage this little fellow out. There's these old ones, which is probably an 18,000 VPH, tend to have much weaker hairsprings, and I don't like them hanging on the weight, the balance hanging on the weight of them when removing. So there we go. That looks pretty good. Let's just have a quick close-up. Oh yeah, it doesn't look bad at all. And put that to the side with the balance screw. Quick check that all the power is off the mainspring, even though I know I've already done it, and it is indeed. And then we're going to remove the pallets. Single screw. moving. There we go. We have to be very, very wary with these because pallet fork pivots are so fragile, so easy to break on any movement, not just vintage ones, so you have to be very careful. But vintage pallet bridges or pallet cocks seem to be typically bulkier and also have a tendency to be a much tighter fit in my experience than modern movements, which tend to be more of a sort of drop-on fit, as it were. There we go. So that's the pallet bridge. Although it's only held by one screw, it does actually bridge the entire pallet fork. And then pallet fork, which is shiny gold coloured. It's a gilt coloured pallet fork. That's not something you see very often. The train looking just there is very sticky, reluctant to move. It seems to be okay in some bits, and then it's catching. Okay, let's take the train bridge off and see what we look like under here. Well, that's interesting. As I've unscrewed that and released the pressure, it's spun a little. You'll note there also we've got a separate removable component, which is for the centre wheel pinion, the sweep seconds. Oops, more very long screws. Just look at that. That's crazy. What on earth were Longines thinking when they made this? Craziness. They're almost long enough to go right the way through and hold the dial on. There we go. Beautifully made bridge with brass jewel holders. Longines 81477721, which is obviously the Longines caliber number. And for those who don't know, this obviously was back at a time when Longines made their own calibers, whereas the ones that you see in modern day are typically ETA powered. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all, because they are exceptional movements. They're very good, but it is obviously something to be aware of. So what we have here is an indirect drive seconds, center seconds. We have the fourth wheel, which is this one here, which would be in a place where that would drive an off-center seconds, as it were, and this is actually driving the small center seconds pinion here, which is on a little sprung fork like you would find on a chronograph. So I need to be very careful that that doesn't disappear. Very similar to the Vostok, standard Vostok movements. I'm going to go ahead and remove this little shock spring. Which, much to my surprise, is held on by a standard size screw, or a not ridiculous sized one, rather. something that's quite normal in the scope of these things. This is just like a chronograph spring, tension spring, and that leaves us with the barrel bridge, which covers the barrel and the second wheel. Beautiful decoration on the movement down here, which hopefully comes across on the camera. But if you look down into the movement there, the finishing is just gorgeous. Very, very nice indeed. So ratchet wheel screw, ratchet wheel, ratchet wheel click, which made a bid for freedom, as you saw there, but thankfully we caught it. There it is. Need to dress these tweezers up a little. We've got some more of the mystery gunk down here. So this could be an explanation for what's been blocking things up. I don't know what that is exactly, but it looks almost like a kind of resin material. Certainly shouldn't be inside a watch movement. Doesn't belong there. So look at the barrel. That's pretty good. A little, very little, well, next to nothing side shape wise. Very little end shake on that though. In fact, almost nothing. Well, there is a little, but it certainly could do with more, I believe. We'll investigate that further when we've got everything apart and cleaned. Ready for rebuild. Okay. Crown wheel screw. Or screws, rather. Get the right size screwdriver. I don't want to mangle up the screw heads. I'm a little disappointed that we haven't found one or both of the missing screws from the innards of the movement as yet. I was kind of hoping that that was going to be the cause of the problem, which would have been great both for finding a simple quick fix. Obviously it's still going to need a cleaning service, but simple quick fix to the problem, and also save me having to hunt around and try and find a couple of suitable screws. Hey ho. Okay, so we're pretty good there. More crazy long screws. Except that one, strangely. So we have, it appears, two very long screws and one much shorter one. Yes, indeed we do. Now that's interesting. I don't know if there's a reason for that, but if you look at these screws, in fact I'm just going to stop the video and zoom in so you can see this clearer. So here we are up close. This screw, you can see, has a slightly thicker head and a shorter thread. This comes from up here. This one in the middle and this one at the end are both about the same length, but the middle one has a much larger shoulder up on the top. I don't know if that's relevant, if that's maybe just how it's been put together or if that plays a part in something, but that's something obviously I will have to remember for the reassembly. And the looking at it now, there's a thing. Now I'm just going to look at the two screws here from the train bridge, and I've just noticed, glancing over at them, what we have is the exact same thing here. We have one with a longer shoulder and one with a shorter shoulder, but both the same length, and I have a sneaking suspicion that two of those, probably the two with the shoulders, should actually be in the train bridge, and the others are for the barrel bridge, I suspect. I've got a suspicion that that's what should be the case there, and they've been put back in the wrong place, and that might have a bearing on the running of the movement, and it might also be an explanation as to why the train seemed to spin and free off a little when I loosened those train bridge screws. Apologies if my voice is kind of going in and out a little bit here, but as I'm leaning forward, I'm sort of leaning my chin on my bench to steady everything as I look, and my microphone, my lapel mic is clipped onto my shirt, so I might be losing you a little, but hopefully it's audible. So let's have a look. Come on now. Let's lift this up over the screw for the setting lever. Okay. And, oh, sorry, I just realised I'm still zoomed in there. Let me zoom back out for you. Apologies, there we go. So that's the barrel and second wheel bridge, or barrel bridge, but obviously second wheel bridge being part of it. Second wheel, now obviously, like a fool, I haven't taken off the cannon pinion, so that's not going to come out yet, but I can sneak the mainspring barrel out of there, a nice fat barrel. I'll take a look at the spring momentarily and see what that looks like. There's bits of old lubrication evident, none on the pallet fork, which is good because you often see that there is. It's not over oiled. That's actually, somebody's had a good attempt at this, and I'm wondering if the problem is the shouldered screw. Very interesting indeed. I love the decoration on this side, the Côte de Genève on this side, which you're not even going to see because the dial's on, but it's coming out lovely. It's so nice. So there's the cannon pinion. I should now be able to lift away the second wheel, so like so. The train of wheels looks pretty good. Nothing hideously out of place or dubious looking. And this looks generally good. I'll unscrew the setting lever screw. Very, very long head on that, so that's one to be careful of. I imagine they are not the most common and readily available parts nowadays. And I'll take the stem, the clutch, and the winding pinion. Everything looks in quite good condition. By crikey, that one's tight. Oh, there we go. I hate screws that are incredibly tight on a movement, because you never quite know if they're going to come out eventually and behave, or if they're going to suddenly just go click and leave you a screw head and curse words. Thankfully, in this case, this one unscrewed, and one of those has popped off. There's the setting, the setting lever spring. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Where's the other one gone? That'll show up in a moment. I think it's fallen into the movement. The minute wheel, and sit up there with the cannon pinion. The intermediate wheel, setting wheel. We have got the yoke spring, which is a fairly typical kind of thing. Accompanying the yoke spring, of course, is the yoke, and the final part is the setting lever screw, which I need to unscrew a little more. There's the errant little setting lever spring screw just here. Okay, last piece, setting lever screw. Just look at the size of that. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. These are the bits, or those are the bits, the setting lever screw, which are most commonly forgotten on a rebuild. That's interesting. It has a little stepped portion there where it fits into the hole that it pivots on. So it's pivoting on itself and not the stem, the shaft of the setting lever screw, as is normal. And it also makes location easier for the rebuild, which is nice. I like that. That means you can build all of the keyless works up, and then turn it over and insert the setting lever screw, which is good. A little bit of wear down here. I don't know if that's actually from the cannon pinion rotating, or if that's from where somebody's maybe cleaned up that area a little. Not entirely sure. And then we've got this sort of what looks like an early rudimentary shock type system. So with the exception of the mainspring barrel, that's really as much as I can do with this. And thank you for watching.